All right. Well, Allison, it's great to see you. And I'm Alan Saley, and I've been in the pathwork, I guess, consciously and unconsciously for my entire life. My parents were longtime path workers, and they were with Eva in the original training group, were pathwork helpers. And I think that just like what you've been saying, Allison, I mean, the lectures just land with certain people. Just like you, something happens to you, it transforms you in a certain way. You can't really forget it, or it means it's penetrating your soul somehow.
Mhm.
And I think that, I mean, in this lecture, the guide talks about that some people are seekers and some people are not. And I think we can say that. I think that's a fair statement. And I'll get to that later on. But maybe we can do a quick round of who's here. Uh, Joel, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm Joel Rosso. I've been doing the pathwork for about 10, 12 years and pretty regularly. And Tracy, my spouse, is also a path worker. And so we're actively calling each other out on a regular basis. So if I slip off my pin, I have Tracy right there by my side to say, "Hey, what are you doing? Well, come on." And I'm so thrilled to be part of this group where we have so many active participants on a regular basis to support each other as we're on this journey. And I'm especially thankful for your leadership and guidance, Alan, each month in taking so much time and devoted effort to lead the lecture and explain it to all of us in such an informed and well-spoken way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Sid.
I'm Sid Schwartzberg. I've been around the path for a very long time, and I enjoy this group, and I'm trying to be a little bit more involved in the path work. I left for a while, and like that.
Great seeing you, Sid.
How you doing, Joel? You up in?
Hi, Sid.
Hi. How are you?
Good, good. Nice to see you.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hey, Barb.
Hey. Hi, Barbara.
That's
Hiya.
been in Barcelona, another longtime path worker.
Yep.
Yes, we really have a mixture of older and new people. And Barbara, you've
Yeah.
also a longtime path worker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I was part of the pathwork actively around 1976,
Yeah.
but also had a lapse, I would say, I don't know, maybe 40 years. And it's only been within the last 3 years or so that I've become like really reinterested and following and looking at the lectures with this group, which has been really wonderful.
I joined in 68.
All right. So, and Regina, you've been around for not so long, but you've been on your spiritual journey for a long time, especially through the Catholic Church. I can't hear you. You got to unmute yourself.
Hold
Good.
on.
Okay.
I just got in, and I don't know what voice or anybody's voice it comes and it cut off. So I don't know if it's my computer. So what was your question? Because I just got in.
Well, we were all introducing ourselves very
What
briefly.
is
And one thing is that, Regina, your bandwidth might
okay?
be too low. In other words, if you turn off the camera, you'll probably be able to communicate better. We won't have dropouts and lags, I think. It's a chance. It's one possible explanation why you're freezing. Mhm.
She froze.
Yeah, sometimes the internet connection.
You come in very
What I would say,
yeah,
Regina, is
because
turn off the camera. It'll be easier with
it
audio.
says unstable.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. So if you turn off the camera, but keep on the audio, then you should be able to hear us and we should be able to hear you, I think.
Is she in New York?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, she is. Yes.
How are you?
That's good. Hey, Regina, can you hear us?
Yes, we lost her.
Internet's not perfect. And then we have Teresa. Good to see you, Teresa. Um, do you want to say a couple?
Helen,
Mhm.
sure. I've been on the Pathwork. I'm not sure how many years actually, maybe around 4 or 5, introduced by my friend Juan. And I really enjoy this group and the lectures and and your leadership. It's very eye-opening.
Thank you very much. And then there's Debra Sterling, who's driving. So I'm not going to ask you to look into the camera or turn it on because I know you're driving and you'll
It's
get.
okay. I can turn on the microphone. Hello, everybody. I'm almost home, and I'll come on camera. My name is Trebra, and I've been doing Pathwork for 5 years now. I'm fully committed to this work. It drove me absolutely insane when I first came upon it. My head exploded, and I was so happy. And I doing most of my training, and in Pittsburgh, I just finished my transformation uh, program in February, and in September, I'm starting my teacher training back in Pittsburgh. And I like most of you guys said, I love coming into this group. Are so incredibly knowledgeable, and the way you explain the concepts, it's really, really enlightening. So I love this work, and I love being around you all, and I'll see you all soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, so it is a real gift to be able to read these lectures and have the affluence to have this time together, the leisure to have this time together. Not everyone can have this. And as the guide says in this lecture, we have to, it takes an effort of spiritual growth to learn how to deal with the good times as well as with the bad times. That's paradoxical, right? I mean, people would think it doesn't really, if you're having good times, it doesn't require any effort. But of course, good times may not really be so good if you don't know how to receive them. Um, all right. So anyway, Juan, would you give us a quick meditation?
Yeah, well, first let me introduce myself. Again, I am Juan Jesus Burgos. I have been on the path for the past, well, in this lifetime, I would say, for about over 10 years now. I encountered the teachings, in, I think, 2013 or so. So I think it's around 12 years actually that I have been on the path. But I mean, to me, this work is incredible. I mean, it was just life transmuting from the minute I read the first lecture. It took over me, and I couldn't imagine life without it. And I am just sad that I didn't encounter it earlier, because I think I would have avoided many many missteps in life, and I would have been, I think, much more advanced on the path. But anyhow, as it is right now, I have made the most of it, and I am very, very happy where I find myself today because of these teachings. I mean, my life is much more, happy life, I would say, to say the least, because of these teachings. And yeah, with that being said, yes, I'll go ahead and, let us tune in to this beautiful time, and let's do a quick meditation. I'll say first, let us close our eyes, and just let's breathe in for to the count of 10 for, let's say, 3 times. Breathe in to the count of 10 and hold it, and to the count of 10, and then exhale to the count of 10, just to relax the body and kind of like tune our minds to this beautiful time, to this blessed time that we and so that we become more and more receptive to receive these most wonderful teachings that we are about to receive. So let's breathe in Hold it. Exhale to the count of 10 if you can. Do that 3 times. And I would like to invoke the Spirit Guide and Jesus Christ and all the spirit of the kingdom of heaven to help us become receptive and to open ourselves, our souls, our minds, our heart, and to receive this, these teachings and to make ourselves receptive to the words that we are about to receive to our leader Alan, but directly from the Spirit Guide, so that we can so that these words really resonate deep in our beings, in our souls, so that we can understand and not only understand, but really be able, through God's blessings, through Christ's blessings, and through the Spirit Guide's blessings, to put into practice these teachings every day, every moment of our lives, so that we can really connect to that inner highest self, to that inner spirit that is dwelling within us, around us, and everywhere. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I often say, and it's interesting, this is an interesting lecture. This divided into 2 parts. There's like 2 topics addressed. The folly of watching for results while on the path. This phrase itself is a little, it's a little bit of an illustration of the fact that the ego has a hard time with the path work. There's Regina again. Obviously, the ego is focused on results and planning for the future and making sure everything is okay and making sure that we're in our comfort zone. But the guide often says that the ego itself is not really responsible for spiritual growth. I mean, to kind of make a metaphor here that, the ego can lead us to the door of the church or the temple, but it can't open it. The higher self has to do that. It leads us to the point where we are able to take in more spiritual truth. But the ego doesn't give that to us. Um, so the whole concept of results, it it's magnetized, the ego magnetizes that phrase, I think. It wants to hold on to concrete things. And where spiritual reality is concerned, it's hard to do that. Um, the idea that our spiritual striving creates material results is something that the guide talks about here on the first page. And there's a couple of themes in this first part of the lecture. One theme is the folly of comparing one person to another. You can never really compare one person's path to another's. Um, the ego, of course, always tries to compare, and there's lots of metrics that people use to compare one person to another in our society. But that kind of falls apart when it comes to the spiritual and our spiritual practice and our path. Uh, so the guide says, paragraph 2, it is erroneous to measure your progress by whether or not life's ups and downs continue to manifest for you. Now, that's sort of would seem to contradict some of the other things the guide has said. And I'm going to quote from another lecture. He says, that's lecture 212, one important gauge of the pathwork can constantly be used to determine your state. What is your life manifestation telling you? How rich and full is your life? How much are joy, peace, and abundance increasingly open to you? How much less are you afraid and reluctant to meet and expose the deepest regions of your innermost self? When you encounter inner blocks in momentary crises, how fully do you travel through them to find yourself more fully you? These questions, when honestly probed, will lead you to the truth about your progress. They will tell you whether or not you are stuck, whether you deceive yourself, perhaps hoping that you can avoid dealing with certain unpleasant inner material. So it's not that there won't be any good times or bad times. It's how we respond to what we encounter that is an indication of our spiritual growth. The guy talks about later on how we address the issues that keep coming up. I mean, being here on Earth means that we are going to address certain problems, issues, and crises that come from before we were born. And that's another thing the guy does on the first page, brings out the context. Now, that's, of course, where therapy leaves off. This phrase, when you are born, you always bring your basic conflicts with you. And the whole idea in that fourth paragraph about how we're in a process that can be measured in many lifetimes of bringing conflicts that we seek to understand and purify in every successive life. Now, that's a concept that's really foreign to the technical therapeutic understanding, I presume, which is that we have to try to address functionality in life. But where does it come from? Where do our distortions come from? Where do our conflicts come from? And here the guide says that they existed before we were born. And there's a lot to be done in understanding exactly what they are and addressing those conflicts. So in that way, therapy and the pathwork is a marriage of spirituality and therapy. So on page 2, the guide says, recognition and change are not the same thing. To some degree, recognition creates a slow change. We know that. I mean, the core energetics is founded upon the idea that just recognizing that you have a problem doesn't fix it. So there are deep emotional issues that have to be dealt with, and even characterological body issues, in the ways in which the emotions are held within the body, that helps you understand things that you might not even be conscious of, blocks and problems and issues that you didn't even know you had that were suppressed. So the recognition is important, and he says actually on page 2 that to some degree, a very gradual change is taking place by virtue of the constant, honest recognition of childish emotions. But that is only one part of it. The rest of this page, he talks about the need to go into understanding these problems in depth and conflicts in depth. Inner change is best indicated by the changes in your reactions to troubles and difficulties. And I think that's something that all of us have experienced, you know. And when the guy talks about the spiral movement, you know that you have certain problems and you kind of go around in a spiral and you meet your problems again, but on a different level, right? I mean, just as a child would have a problem because he didn't understand what he was getting himself into, let's say, the same problem comes up when you're older and you realize now you have a bigger perspective. So the way to deal with conflicts and crises continuously grows as you develop spiritually. Your only yardstick for progress is your reaction and not whether times of upheaval still continue to exist in your life. So, I mean, that's something that I think the ego doesn't want to hear. I mean, obviously, the ego wants to hear that if we're on a spiritual path, um, things are going to keep getting better and better. Um, but the guide says, and I think this is by virtue of the fact that we're here on Earth, these times of upheaval will continue to exist. And later on, the guide talks about the fact that we need spiritual strengthening, not only to deal with the bad times, but also the good times. You know, you can fritter away the good times. You can take, uh, the guide in the very first lecture, if you guys remember it, the Sea of Life. The guide has this metaphor about like that life is like a boat and you're the skipper of a little boat. And sometimes the boat goes through storms and rough seas. Other times there's a quiet part where you're calm and it's sunny and the wind is blowing and you're sailing. But one has to know how to deal with both of those times. Not only the times where the surf is lashing up against the boat and there's storm clouds, but also the good times, the times when it's calm. I guess those are the times we have to learn how to gather in our spiritual strength and prepare for the next difficult time, or at least use that time for contemplation, right? For self-understanding, for doing some of the spiritual exercises that we've learned here on the Pathwork, for meditation. And the guy talks about meditation too later on. He says, gradually, little by little, you will cease being afraid of the times in shadows. First, you will approach these times in a spirit of courage and with a constructive attitude toward what you could learn. And each time when you learn an important lesson about yourself, you will emerge from the shadow into the light, a stronger and freer person, a happier and more serene being. So here again, the bottom of page 2, he kind of recaps it. He says, the only way you can measure your progress is by your reactions to the problems life inevitably brings, and also by what you gain each time, how much you grow after each mishap, whether it touches a big and important issue or a rather insignificant one that nevertheless once had the power to upset you disproportionately. So then at the end of the page, of course, he talks about again about it's exceedingly difficult for other people, no matter how well they know you, to determine your progress. That's another thing about the inability that we have really to compare one person's progress or path with another. On page 3, this is a troubling sentence for me. Um, Only what you really feel can ever be the yardstick. Outer confirmation cannot be the determining factor. So the question is, how do we know what we really feel? And the only way to know that, I suppose, is to use the tools we have, whether it's the body work, whether it's meditation, whether it's asking one of our friends to uh, tell them honestly what they think of us, whether it's the process of listing one's faults. Um, these are the kinds of tools that help us um, know what we really feel. Um, yeah, always a problem for somebody who has a big idealized self-image like yours truly. But we're going to get into that later. Um, all right. So, and then he says down the road, he says, major changes from without can only come after you have brought about major changes from within. So, straightforwardly enough, as they say, be the change you want to see in the world, right? If you are the change, then you will see the world change. We talked about that in the last lecture, right, Tracy? You always talk about that. Um, all right. So another caution he says down here is at the bottom. He says, the idea that because you started to work on the path, your difficulties will cease is just as wrong as the idea that because you are on the path, added difficulties will come your way. That's interesting because I think that both kinds of prejudices exist. Uh, in other words, people say, hey, I'm on a spiritual path, so everything's got to be beautiful from here on in. And if it's not, there's something wrong with the path, or there's something wrong with what I've been led to believe about how things are going to get better. But then the other thing is that people say, I'm afraid of self-knowledge because it's going to make things worse. I'm afraid of learning more about myself or going on a path because it's going to open up some Pandora's boxes. It's going to open up some uncomfortable things and things will get worse. So the guide is saying that neither things are true. It's not that things will become a lot easier, or that things will become more difficult, but that your understanding of things puts you in a different relationship to them. I think that's what we mean by this concept of the spiral, where we meet the same problems but on a higher level every time. All right, so I'm just going to go through the summary and then we'll talk about these things. On page 4, as I mentioned earlier, before we started, the guy talks about that, there are people who are seekers and people who are not. And I do think that that's true. Um, he says the only difference between these two types of people is that the person who searches in the right direction will learn to have a different approach to both the positive and negative manifestations. So, in other words, if you're not a seeker, um, you're going to maintain the same kind of approach you have to the good times and the bad times. But if you are trying to make progress on a spiritual path, you will find different approaches than somebody who is not trying to look within to the positive and negative manifestations. As the guide says, of course, um, good things can really be bad and bad things can really be good. So even the idea that something is a negative manifestation or positive doesn't really doesn't really hold to scrutiny. Because I think many of us would say that some of the things in our lives that appear to be tragic, appear to be hurtful, or appear to be very disappointing, turned out to be blessings in disguise. And on the other hand, of course, conversely, it's the other way around too, that all of a sudden something great happened and it turned out really not to be so great. I'm reminded of the old TV show The Millionaire, where a millionaire's assistant had an eyedropper and he would drop uh, one drop of water on a name selected in random in a phone book. And his assistant would go out and give this person $1 million. And sometimes it would be great, sometimes it would be the worst thing that could possibly happen. So that's just another thing about taking it with a grain of salt as to what actually is a positive or a negative manifestation. Because, of course, that deals with one of the fundamental paradoxes of the spiritual perception, which is that everything is exactly what it is meant, what's meant to happen. Everything that comes to you is a creation that you have created with all the co-creators. Everything has led up to this exact moment. At the same time, you can make bad choices and good choices. So that's a big fundamental paradox. Everything happens for the best, but you could have made different choices as well. Here he says later on page 4, oh, one thing about being is more spiritually on a path is that cause and effect tend to come faster for people who are spiritual seekers. In other words, uh, stuff tends to not take a long time to manifest. Or when you do something, the guide in some other lectures talks about the fact that some people appear to get away with murder. They just breeze through life. They do a lot of things that don't seem to be ethical, uh, and they're doing just fine. But then again, we have the problem about comparing one person to another. But for folks that are really trying to understand their spiritual path, I think one's always experienced that there's no waiting. I mean, we do something and screw up in some way and we find out right away. I've had an experience. So that's something that also should be borne in mind. Cause and effect come faster. Um, And of course, the guide says it again, any theories which proclaim that a little effort of spiritual and psychological work will either exempt you from life's downs or bring you more difficulties than you would otherwise have are totally wrong. All right. The difficulties, you neither have more nor fewer difficulties because you're on the path now. The difficulties you now encounter are the fruits of what you sowed some time ago, with tendencies that are still alive within yourself, whether you're conscious of their far-reaching significance or not. If the difficulties in your life come to a climax shortly after you started work on this path, this did not happen because you have just started. The problems would have come up anyway. Your psyche, which is far more knowing and far-seeing than your conscious mind, knew that this culminating point was bound to occur soon. And as I said on page 5, he says again that the path can help you deal not only with difficult times, but also with the good times. On the path of self-search, one learns not only to deal better with difficulties, but also with happy times. The person who is still in darkness and ignorance about the facts of human existence and the significance of life can handle the good happenings no better than the adverse ones. Both need wisdom, maturity, and the spiritual knowledge that gives the true incentives for self-knowledge so that your search can be conducted constructively. That's a dog. Mm. So that's the first half of the lecture. So I think we should talk about it before we talk about the second lecture, which I found uh, also very challenging. Um, so what resonates for various people? What do you think? Any thoughts about what we've discussed so far?
If I may,
Yeah, Deborah.
um, there's something we call them singers. I don't know if you guys use them when we're reading the lectures and we underline something that really impacted us, and we just talk about it. And there was a line on the lecture. I don't remember what pages it was. I was reading it online, but it reads: inner change is best indicated by the changes in your reactions to troubles and difficulties. And for me, especially this last uh 2 years, I'm actually 2 years. I'm gonna mark it back to I guess it's the beginning of a cycle where I had to really put these lessons into practice in how am I gonna approach all these troubles and difficulties. In Pittsburgh we call them beautiful problems, right?
Right.
Nothing's really something that is gonna just throw you out. And starting with the car accident that I had that I'm still dealing with, it just thing after thing after thing happened. My mom passed away. My stepfather followed right after. My son took the car out and wrecked it without a license. All these things are happening. And the difference in me is like, how am I going to approach this situations instead of the usual freaking out? The world is going to end. Why is this happening to me? I found myself doing the more productive, um, doing it in a more productive way of looking at them and sitting with myself and really feeling my emotions. That's one thing that through Pathwork I've learned to do more. Not run away from them, acknowledge the fear, acknowledge the upset, acknowledge the sadness, and then what can I learn from these experiences? And the thing that I'm learning more and more is that you can actually make life what you want it to. You could go into problems and approach them as problems, or you can approach them as beautiful learning experiences. And I think that changes the way life unfolds. I think it brings peace that comes with acceptance and knowledge that even though all this looks so discombobulated and crazy, like I'm not gonna die. And I do have to say that ever since I have been putting this work into work actively, my life is like I think like I ever thought it could be possible to be able to be in life, because my helper keeps on telling me, listen, we're here in this world. This world is not it's not fun. Shit happens in the world. It's how we approach the situations in this world. We're here. I think it was the guide in a lecture said that we need to be here because we need friction in order to figure ourselves out. We're not gonna do it in heaven. It's too nice up there. We need to be here. So that's what I've been learning, and it's really helped. It's just been incredible how I've been able to face all these situations that in very near past, not too long ago, 5 years, I'm gonna say, before I started to do this work, that would have probably broken me down. So that is one thing. The inner change is best indicated by the changes in my reactions to troubles and difficulties. That's one thing that really, really hit home because I've been living that for the last couple of years.
Mm. Thank you very much. That really resonates with me too. The second part of the lecture is about the idealized self-image. I think the way it is that we we want unconditional love, and we don't think we have the right to get it. We don't think we are entitled to it. So we try to figure out other ways to get it, which are devious. Um, yeah, like I myself, I had a problem at work where I'm ready to retire, but I can't deal with it because I want everyone to think of me as the idealized self-image keeps putting you in these boxes where you want to please everybody and you want to be envied and admired. So I just got into a situation where they said, well, why don't you work 4 days a week instead of five? Because I really needed more time for Pathwork stuff. And I didn't do it. They just kind of said, like, let's do this. And all of a sudden, something that I really wanted to figure out a way to do it, kind of got done. Um, I sort of was not sure about how to approach the bosses about this, but I got into a situation which wasn't that comfortable, and a resolution came about that was actually something that I really wanted. So, in other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is that my reaction, one's reaction to negative things, let's say on the job, you have a choice about how to react. And your attitude and your reaction really does a lot to change the whole environment.
I would say also that that's something that resonated with me very much, in this first part of the lectures, because that key word, their emotional reactions, and to me, this is so important because it is really how you notice your spiritual progress. When you find yourself like in facing individual characters or these harmonious situations that used to trigger you, and you really thrown off, you blown up, and you react in all kinds of ways, because you obviously your ego, your self pride have been touched. And so when I find myself now dealing with my own family, there are very, very difficult characters there. But I notice myself, and this makes me very happy that I do no longer react, upset and thrown off when I encounter these difficulties. So this is very, very important to me, to when I am able to not only not to react, thrown off or violently or disharmoniously to this individual or, triggering, but mainly because also I am able to catch myself, not reacting and being able to observe myself and say and just say it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is not the proper way to handle this, and that act alone tells me a lot, and it feels great. It feels great because when you lose control, when you give others the right and the power to do, to play with your emotions, basically, because that's what we do when we allow these outer, individuals or situations, to trigger us. So This is very, very important. And another thing that I'm learning, and you mentioning the feelings earlier, is that how important it is that as we keep working on this path and really knowing ourselves better, connecting with those causes and that are deep down in the subconscious, as we progress along this line, we are able to really connect with our feelings and really feel and even allow ourselves to be guided, not so much anymore by the intellectual mind, by the intellectual thinking, but through the feelings, which is a wonderful way when you no longer have to be dissecting and intellectualizing and breaking down everything, that you actually, when something happens, you intuitively feel into these situations or reactions, and you are able to catch yourself. And it's like, wow, and just not no longer this wasting, because this takes a lot of energy. And we go back to the background thoughts and foreground thoughts and all that. And you no longer need to do that when you are able to connect with the feelings and just like feel into the situation rather than having to break it down and analyzing and all that. So it's a wonderful way when we as we progress on this path eventually, that we are able to connect with our feelings and allow our feelings to guide us rather than that the intellectual mind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that you're talking about meeting the same problem on a higher level, the famous spiral that continues that the guy talks about. I mean, I think that when you do this work of self-facing, you kind of get more flexibility. Something is going on that you're transcending the ego, and it's
Yes.
changing your relationship to the world and other people.
Slowly but surely. Yes.
So,
If
Tracy,
I could just comment on what Juan's saying here. So there was a line in the lecture, it was pretty early on, and it was talking about when we have friends or relatives, and we have a difference of opinion, and that it may be a strong difference of opinion. We see a lot of that right now, but that if there's a deep emotional bond to this person or individuals, that bond overrides the importance of the argument, if you will.
sure.
That we could have very different ideas about something that we both feel strongly about, but that our love for each other carries the day. And I think that that's something that Juan is talking about, or that I heard, between the lines when he's talking about his family, that it's not necessary to react to the personality or to the energy in a particular situation, but to remember the strong love that he has for his family. And the other thing is that I've been having a lot of time lately to be doing different spiritual and religious readings, and the so in the major religions that talk about the love for God, and and then what I read in Judaism and Christianity and Hinduism, that it's our love and care for each other is how we express our love for God.
Yes.
And I know you're a very devout person, Juan, and so I just wanted to comment on that your love for people who may be difficult, or that are bringing things up. Sometimes these things come up unexpectedly. That's really, to me, an example of your love for God.
Yes, indeed. That's one good instance, Joe, that you mentioned that, because I think in another lecture I was reading, I think Jane's Risby lecture this week, she's talking about, and this used to bother me so much when someone, especially a family member, I had an idea that I think is the right one, and I'm so sure, like this is it, and then someone disagree with me. That used to bother me so much and upset me like crazy. but no, I don't take that too hard so much anymore. It's like, okay, well, that's your opinion, and you see, this feels great when you are able to do that and no longer react, have that strong reactions when someone disagree with you, either family member or someone else. Yeah, so
It
that
gets
reminds
easier and easier,
me.
Juan, the more times we see that we're mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well,
thank you so much. Thank you all for listening.
reminds me of guy was the head of the EMS union when I worked for EMS, and he said, "Well, Alan, I've got two rules. One is don't sweat the small stuff, and what's the other one? It's all small stuff."
But then,
If you use that phrase, I think he probably I sanitized it to some degree, but I'm not sure if he was right about that. But I mean, I think the whole sense of that the ego kind of starts withdrawing a little bit from ourselves in our lives. It's not as important. And uh, I think that's really what he meant. He also thought he had the right to run a red light once a day. Um, that wasn't right, in the ambulance. In any case, now, Tracy, I know you were talking about it, Joel, about how this lecture really spoke to what it was going on with you guys. Can you comment on that, Tracy?
Yeah, I think what one thing I've really noticed lately is that the amount of time that I spend in a certain reaction is significantly diminished. So I'll still have the same reaction to things. That hasn't changed. But instead of sort of it taking me an hour to get myself back out of it, maybe it'll take, 5 minutes or something like that. So I think that's really been a relief. Because I mean, as the guy that said, the difficulties, they're going to keep coming. They're not going to be eliminated because we're on a spiritual path. But what has changed significantly, and I've heard the same thing from everybody who's already spoken, is that my reaction to them has significantly changed. But for me, it's the duration. It's not the kind. I mean, I still have the reaction to but it's just the amount of time that I'm spending in that kind of disconnected state. So
Thank you. Hey, Barbara, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, oops. I don't think there's really much I can add to what's been said. I found this part of the lecture, for me, very understandable, and I had my questions with the second part that I really want to try to get my mind around more. This part seemed uh, very very understandable, and I also appreciate you pointing out, Alan, the other lecture that has a slightly different way of saying this. That wait a minute, no, your life does represent where you are spiritually, and I think that two things can be true. That maybe there is an aspect of that, and that one of the things that this lecture for me points out is that sometimes we don't have that big view. We don't know that all there is that we might have had in a past life that we bring into this life that we're dealing with, and so that's part of the equation.
Right, the bigger picture.
The bigger picture.
Yeah, I found the second part of the lecture, somewhat difficult to wrap my head around as well. But I think it's mainly about the idealized self-image. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but does anyone else want to comment? Marianne, do you want to say something about the? Can't hear you. You got to unmute yourself.
Uh-oh.
Marianne, can you hear me okay? Can't hear you. All right.
I can hear you, but I did not have the time today to review the lecture, so I'm sort of
All right.
hanging in by a thread here, but
He is charged. Okay.
I can't wait to read it because this is all very pertinent.
Hey, there you are, Teresa. Um,
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Teresa. Good to see you. I like the cathedral. What is that?
It's Sagrada Familia. Well, I am with Ellen because you know what? I actually listened to it, but I think because I was coming from another seminar, I listened to a wrong lecture right before this. But you always do such a nice outline, and I agree pretty much with every speaker. And yeah, and I completely agree with Tracy. Same thing happens to me. I still trigger. But now I have that second when I actually say to myself, okay, you are triggered, breathe. And then I'm aware of my trigger. It's not that I'm not triggering anymore, but there is like a little pause and I am able to soften it a little bit. And another thing came with that love thing, which Joel was talking about. It actually occurs to me too in relation to my loved ones, because my brother is going through some major difficulty. His wife of almost 50 years died. He's in a deep grief. And sometimes it's difficult to speak with him, but then that love comes in and say, oh my God, you know, I just lost a job and I see how painful it is. Imagine losing a love partner, you know, how devastating. And so even though sometimes he doesn't behave in a very loving way, and I want to kind of sort of react, it softens with that love and with the ability to just understand where he's coming from. But the thing that hit me the most is about the spiral. I think that that is absolutely true. I see it in my life. So as you guys know, because I've been here for a few years, I have a history of being fired from jobs and disagreement with my bosses. And sure enough, it came around. But every time it comes, it's a little softer, I would say now. And actually, the way this happened now, I was laid off. I was given 4 weeks of severance. It happened in the perfect time when there is a summer. So it's like the spirit is still doing it, but it's like really sheltering me from all sides, saying, okay, you're going to have to go through this shit again, but we're going to soften the blow any possible way. And I'm like, actually, looking at it saying, well, you know, they really truly softened the blow every single way they could. And perhaps next time it's just not even going to happen at all. You know, so it is like a spiral where it used to be very harsh and very unpleasant. And now it's getting more and more towards like soft landing. So, and I read somewhere else and I heard somewhere else that this is what happens, like, and even through incarnations, that let's say you came from an alcoholic family, right? So first you are in the alcoholic family, your father is beating up on you. Then your neighbor, you know, as you progress spiritually, you move out of that family, you see a neighbor having the problem with alcoholic. Then as you progress on the spiritual, you hear from some distant person, you know, from a story being an alcoholic. And finally you just see it on TV, you know, and you are so far removed from it, like it's still in your orbit, but you are further and further and further removed from it because you work through all of the implications and all of these impediments that brought you in there in the first place. So I do believe that this is like a spiral. And I see it in my own life with those crazy bosses. I still get them, but like I said, the landing is so much softer. And then I am more able to stand up in those times when I used to really be crushed and go down. Now I'm like, hey, it's summer. I'm on vacation. Let's enjoy. You know, so it's definitely showing up in my, you know, in the way that things are happening, and also in the way that I'm internally dialoguing with it and behaving with it. And I also have to say to somebody else who said, I think the lady prior to this, that when the pain comes, I sit with it and I'm able to sit with it and digest it and let it in. Not necessarily that I truly understand exactly what it is, but I'm like, you know what? The only way to go through it is to go through it. Let me not push it out. Let me not escape. Let me not start getting too busy because, you know, when you're out of work, you have time on your hands. So, so to speak, shit hits the fan much more often because every day it comes to the surface because you're quiet. And I'm able to sit with it. I'm able to deal with it. I'm able to observe it and say, okay, that's past. Now let's go to gym and do something productive. So I didn't read the lecture, but it really resonates very deeply. I think it's the progress with the triggers, with the self-understanding, with the evaluation of events, with asking, is that really true? My assessment of it, and then asking, what's the benefit? What is the benefit? What am I learning here? What's the lesson? And trying to see it as a lesson, because that's what it is. Life is just a whole bunch of lessons, some of them more difficult than others. And I think it's our approach and lack of resistance that actually can make it fun, like flowing with this thing, saying, yeah, well, I'll go back to work. But for now, I'm
Mhm.
out here, it's summer, and it actually can be very pleasant depending on how I look at it.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Sid, you have thoughts?
I've been going through the idea of not responding habitually to different problems, where I identified that I tend to have catastrophic thinking. So if something's coming my way, it's going to be the last thing and the worst thing, and I won't be able to handle it. So I have to. So I've been experimenting with that, and trying to see uh, that's false, and find the gems inside of the experience that I grow from, and it's been working. It's been working for the first time in a long time, and the fear is leaving, and I read that in the lecture somewhere too. With the fear eventually is gone.
Right, right.
Looking forward to, but it is much less. But there's so many things that come at you. It's really incredible.
Gradually, little by little, you will cease being afraid of the times in the shadows. Yeah. Is that what you meant?
I think if you mean, I think he was. I took that to mean that the difficulties, you cease to experience the difficulties in darkness.
As catastrophic, right.
Yeah.
Catastrophic.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I've been having more of a dialogue with myself. Like the other day, something came to me. I said, I don't know how I can do this. And something came to me, says, well, you need help. And then I said, okay, I'd like to have some help. And then I had help. Like the next day, somebody called me, or I read something. And I think I'm starting to get more back into the communication thing. So that's promising.
Thank you. Yeah, this second half of the lecture, I mean, it seems very simple, but why should we be so ashamed or angry or hard to deal with this desire for unlimited love? The desire to be loved exists in every human soul. The desire in itself is not only legitimate and healthy, but it is also in its own way creative, for it leads to being creative. The child's desire for love is limitless, but it is made to feel that such a desire for exclusive and limitless love is wrong. Therefore, it feels guilty about it. It is true that exclusive and limitless love is unrealistic. Its desire is immature. The wrong conclusion of this lies in thinking that desire for love in itself is wrong. The right conclusion would be to feel the type of love I wanted so far is wrong. It cannot be. But I have a right to long for being loved. This can happen provided that I, on my part, learn to love in the right and mature way. Then he says, so the first misunderstanding in this respect is that the longing for being loved is something to be ashamed of. Thus, the longing is buried. Because it is buried, many unfortunate results and consequences come into being. So, what do we think about that? Um, the idea that we can't cope with our own idea for limitless love, we feel guilty about it. What are your thoughts about this? What, before I go into more of what the guide says?
Well, I think, Alan, that that's it's very profound here, but it makes a lot of sense because I think that's what it is when we are children. We are so young, we have this desire, right? I mean, that's our child wants that to be loved unconditionally, no matter how he behaves, and we see that. I mean, I have a grandchild, and I see this behavior in him. He wants, no matter what he does, he wants to get away with everything and be loved and be, and care unconditionally when and how and where he wants. He wants things his way all the time. So when that, and I think that what happens to all of us is that when this is not met, and because our mind are so immature, we make this wrong conclusion, like the guy says here, that it is wrong to desire to be loved. And then we submerge that into our subconscious. And out of this, then we put on a lot of mask and substitute to compensate for this love because it's always going to be there. Like the guy says here, it's a human thing. We all human beings want to be loved. I mean, we can't live without it, really. I mean, but then the thing is that when we submerge and we bury it like this, then we start to seek it in different ways, especially the way of wanting to be applauded, approved of, and accepted, and then we do all kinds of things, almost like even sacrificing our own selves, our own morals, our own spiritual, growth and our spiritual being to acquire, to have this distorted love by being approved of and accepted. And we go through life, dealing with this and the consequences of it. So yeah, so like the guy says here, so much comes out of that because of that wrong conclusion that we enacted when we were so young, and it is in our unconscious, and then the subconscious drives us. Because we are not aware of all these, pseudos, a way of seeking this love. We're not aware of it, and that's the danger, really. But as we grow, especially with this work, we become more and more aware of these ways that we seek this love and seek to be loved, and that's the spiritual work, to that's the self knowledge that the guy talks about, to connect with those areas of our subconscious that are buried there, and that we only see the effects of it on the surfaces, and then we that's the big problem, because then we tend to think that the effects are it, and we neglect to trace that effect to the inner cause that lies hidden right underneath beneath the effects. So it's a lot of work. So, but yeah, just wanted to comment on that a little.
Yeah, well, obviously, a lot of it's about the idealized self-image, the desire for approval,
Yes.
need to be
Mhm.
envied and admired. Um, that's something that I resonate with. You will realize your fight for approval to prove something or other makes you self-centered, proud, arrogant, superior, or unhealthily submissive, which is bound to make you resentful. All of this struggle contributes strongly to the adverse result of people not loving you. Whereas you could be loved if you were free for the entire layer of substitution, if you
Mhm.
allowed yourself to feel the original longing, not being afraid of the supposed humiliation and weakness this desire implies, not being afraid of feeling simple sadness that will never have an unhealthy effect on your soul, you will continue greatly towards your fulfillment. You'll realize that it is not you who are too inadequate to be loved, but that the substitute layer that you artificially concocted is the problem. Yeah, so if you could just be yourself, other people would recognize it and love you.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean, we've experienced that in pathwork groups,
that's simple.
where you are able to, you know, take off the mask, show the lower self, get
Mhm.
angry, get vengeful, um, And then you find that everyone else has those same feelings, and all of a sudden you feel a lot of love because they understand that we're all the same. But quiet puppy boy. Anyway, well, but of course, just relaxing and being yourself is not as easy as it looks because we have adopted these solutions and they have
Right.
worked for many years of our lives. These pseudo solutions have worked. Uh, Either self-centered, proud, arrogant, superior, or unhealthily submissive.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, so the idealized self-image is a big subject. Um, I'm sort of still wondering about how it even gets formed. I mean, and then we're so ashamed of our desire to be loved. Um, I guess I don't really understand that.
You know, I have a comment also because I'm observing my grandchildren. And I just had, I had an incident where I brought my 5-year-old. I missed his birthday, so I said I was going to buy him a toy. And so we went out for like our birthday adventure. And just to cut to the chase, the one thing he wanted, they didn't want to sell me because they couldn't find it. It didn't have a tag on it. And they went to such pains to like try to figure out, like how much to charge me. Or then there's things like, oh, maybe somebody just left it and you should just take it. I mean, it was like, and this little 5-year-old is like getting like, oh no, this is the one thing I want. It's the only one. But he doesn't, he, he says to me, I'm being very patient.
Wow.
And so he has learned that being patient is a value. And so I'm seeing how, my grandchildren are being taught behavior, values, and, how to think of other people, what's most acceptable. And so it's hard to know sometimes how to understand all of this. Anyway, I just wanted to like say
How,
that
how,
that
did
ex-
he
that
be-
experience.
how did he learn to be patient? Do you know?
Well, my daughter's a PhD psychologist and is really into uh, values and behaviors and talking to her children. And I think we have an example of my other grandson who has absolutely no patience. So, perhaps that was, you know, by it, but you know, I talked about it with, and I explained to him, like, look, I can figure out how to get this. I can order it online. You might get it like in a couple of days, but let's just stick it out. I mean, it was a really, and the people in the store were very kind, and they finally were able to figure it out, and they even gave me a little discount for our patients.
Uh, Birthday gift.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a terrific birthday expression for experience for grandma and Conrad. Um, but how this 5-year-old could be aware of, just his awareness of the situation and being patient, even though he wanted something very badly.
I think he learned a valuable lesson. Well, it seems like he's being brought up pretty well. So I was just thinking about this concept of the embarrassment, the denial of the longing. That's I don't think it's difficult for people to feel longing, right? Especially in like a pathwork or a therapeutic situation. People are open to feeling longing. And I guess no one has been perfectly fulfilled in their lives, right? As the guide says in many lectures, all of us find issues. No one, the child demands perfect parenting, and that doesn't exist. But the way in which we um, react against the not perfect parenting that is where we show the conflicts and images that we brought into this life. Because everyone reacts differently to, I mean, the same situations, of course, children, siblings can react very differently to. Because they come in here with different what soul dense, is that one of the words?
Well, is that where the creation of the idea of thyself comes from? How you react to the imperfect parenting.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the idealized self is what you adopt to try to make it in the world. It's a image of perfection. It's an idea that in order to be loved, I must be perfect. So, but it also includes the desire to be envied and admired and approved of, which doesn't sound so nice. Um, and that's what the guy talks about in these two different poles, which is one is the kind of arrogance, pridefulness, and on the other side, submission to imperfect solutions. So the guide talks about how to deal with this misconception about the desire for love. He says the first step is to become aware that this desire exists in you and to what extent. You must become completely aware to what degree you are dissatisfied in this respect. In other words, in respect to being fulfilled and having and being loved. You have to become aware of the substitution, in other words, the defenses you've adopted to cover up your shame of demanding love, unconditional love. You have to experience the emotions which constantly fight for approval. You have to become aware of the compulsion to prove whatever it is you want to prove at any given instance. Now, I think that this proof has to do with, I'm better than you, or I have the right to get something that uh, I have the right to get what I want, or you've got to give this to me. Demands. When you arrive at this self-awareness, not just a few times, but can see how this entire complex of feelings constantly operates in you, you can begin to deal with it. So then he says, you may not necessarily desire the love of the people you want to be approved by. There may not be a specific love object in your life, but the desire to be maturely and rightly loved persists in you, submerged by your fight for approval, for proving yourself, for impressing the world. You will then understand what you really fight for. That's the first phase in this area of development and growth. I cannot emphasize enough that the intellectual knowledge of all this means nothing. You have to experience your emotions in this direction step by step. Then he says a little couple lines later, as your fight for proving yourself diminishes, you prepare the way for real mature love. Your maturing mind will make you understand that the only kind of love that is love is the kind that is given to you freely. So I think that we all understand that, that no matter how much you try to force people to love you, no matter how much you try to build an image that seems to be acceptable, that you believe will get you love, it doesn't really work. Um, First, you will allow other people not to love you if they so choose. That may make you sad, but will never make you tense or compulsive or intense. This sadness will be free of self-pity and will not be a real hardship for you. Therefore, it will not make you unpleasant. I like that, right? Stop proving yourself and and you won't be unpleasant.
So sorry, I have to leave because I have another Zoom meeting I have to do at 8 and I was on one at 4 until this started. So just
All
a
right.
bad timing day, but this is wonderful. This is wonderful. And
Uh,
I'm sorry to leave.
all
Thank,
right. Well, I will send you a videotape if that's okay with
oh,
everyone.
I love that. That would be great. Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
See you.
Thank you all. It's lovely seeing you.
Here,
Bye.
Mary.
Bye. So can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
That it talks about creativity towards, and I'm wondering how that fits, you know, how what did they say? What was the forgot what the that
Well, the last lecture was about that. You recall, the suppression
right.
of positive and creative tendencies.
Mhm, mhm.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it sounded like that I can't remember exactly where it is here, but that this aspect of being of not having these false um or wrong ways of being in order to, let's say, prove yourself or be approved of in some way. That like getting rid of those and just being yourself is more creative, or that somehow to be being creative is being loved, or can be a very loving or excited. I'm mixing it up. I don't. I'd like to see if there's if you the thread of creativity towards being yourself, I think is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, that was dealt with in the last lecture, but I certainly think that the more authentic you can be, the more creative you are
Mhm.
in a true sense. Yeah, in the last lecture, I picked it up. He says the human being suppresses not only negative aspects, but positive and creative tendencies in the soul as well. Our aim is not only to heal the sick part of the soul, but also to encourage the growth and unfoldment of that in you, which is striving for fulfillment, which ought to be expressed, but is not allowed to be.
Yeah, I wish that they repeated that in this lecture. I needed you to hear that. Thank you.
Right. So, I mean, the more you unpack these, what does he call it? The more you unpack these defenses, or these, what he's talking about here, the way we fight for approval, the more you liberate your creativity because the more authentic you become. I think that's true. He says, you will respect only the person who loves you freely. However, you can have the chance of experiencing this free gift only if you don't force it. You can never experience the free gift of love as long as the forcing current operates undetected by your consciousness. Thus, you first have to let people free by permitting them not to love you if they so choose. Please, my friends, do not misunderstand. When I say you force others to love you, I do not refer to any conscious action on your part. I'm speaking of your emotions. If you translate your emotional reactions to people, you will see that it amounts to that. So what he says is almost at the end of the lecture, if you're conscious of your original desire, that is the desire for unlimited love, perfect love, then of your frustration, and then of what you do in your frustration, which is you erect the idealized self-image, you try to win approval, you try to prove something, and then of the forcing current in you, that's what that is. You will clearly see that only by this process do you forfeit the free gift of real love, not because you're not good enough. Then you're on the road upwards. So I guess it really has a lot to do with self-acceptance.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I don't know if there was anybody else ready to speak before that. Um, I'm just really interested in this concept of the desire to be loved. Um, is this a universal concept, right? Do we all have that same desire, like manifested in different ways? And we do all, as like all of us human beings, all of us souls on this earth plane and, in the spirit world, we all have this desire to be loved. So my question is, where does this desire really stem from? Um, Say that we want perfect, limitless love. which is, in my understanding, the love that God gives us. So my question is, do we have unconsciously or from past experience, past lives, do we have a sense of what that love is like? And it is why we desire it so much on this plane.
What do you think, Tracy? You ever thought about that?
And just wait. Okay, I have to get myself back on. Um, that's a very interesting question. I've been thinking about that since reading this lecture. I think I I think it stems from the fact that we are manifestations of love. I think God is love, and I think that's what we all are. And so we're almost longing to be what we are. And to the extent that we have these incarnations which obscures that core, we we're trying to reach it.
They're reaching for the light.
Right.
I love some of the words that are getting used here as we're all speaking, and the few words that have stuck out to me are that are meaningful to me are authenticity and self-acceptance. And what I've discovered over my lifetime is that the more that I really practice and understand and accept myself, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, all the facets of it, that I'm able to experience a higher level of authenticity and connection with others. And I have a wonderful job in this lifetime where I get to practice that all the time. And there's just no room for inauthenticity, even though, obviously it's a practice. Um, what I've discovered for myself in terms of love, I'm very loved in this lifetime. I feel loved now. I have a lot of love in my life. And but what I notice for myself is that when I don't feel love, I don't necessarily go to people in my life. It's not about who's loving me or not. It's the awareness that something inside of me is not connecting with God. And so I'm always working on that connection. Whenever I'm not feeling love, I don't look outside myself and go, why I'm not getting what I need. I'm really knowing that something inside of me is shutting down or is asleep for a moment or whatever that might be, turned away, whatever it might be. And then I work to reconnect with that again so that I then feel that same flow of just like, yay, life's good. So that's
Do you think remembering to love yourself?
say that again.
Do you think it's remembering to love yourself?
Well, I feel a high degree of self-love acceptance. I feel a high degree. So yeah, it's wherever that's still going on, wherever that imperfection is inside of the work of this lifetime. And it's okay. It's like I don't judge it. There's no judgment at all toward myself when that happens. I'm like, oh, it's me. It's me. How will I figure that out again? And then I do. I always do. And then you just start again. So I think the key for me is never judging myself for any of the process that I'm in.
Hmm.
Just really allowing it to say, well, it's okay. That's where you are. It's where you are right now, and it's temporary, and you'll figure it out and just keep moving.
Well, this idea of self-love or love from God, I mean, I think that's an acknowledgement that you cannot depend on other people to give you love. You cannot force other people to love you. And I think the guide is saying that if you are authentic and if you kind of make your way through these layers, then you will receive a lot of love because just your authenticity will make you more lovable.
I think you said that very well. Thank you, Alan, for that. And I feel sorry for anybody who doesn't get to be a therapist, because you get to practice every day. Every day there's people sitting on your couch and you're getting to play with all this stuff. And it's been such a practice in this lifetime. I'm so grateful that this has been the path of this lifetime.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I have another question.
I seem baffled that the lecture didn't say anything about loving other people or giving love.
Well, the guy, in another lecture, I remember him talking about how the need to give love is even more important than the need to get love.
Uh-huh.
And that if people don't give love, it's a very serious kind of crippling,
Uh-huh.
that if you have a need to give out. Um, and perhaps in one way we do that is with our creativity. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, and of course the guide also says in some other lecture, love is relationship. But my biggest lesson for me has been that I can't depend on someone else to give me happiness. There's so much self-nurturing that we can do and so much connection to spirituality that we can create in our lives. And I think most people will agree when I say many times you forget to ask for help. And just like what you said, Sid, that if you ask for help, all of a sudden you do get help. But the ego never likes to ask for help, right? I think that's one of its characteristics. If you're busy proving yourself, trying to win approval, asking for help looks like weakness. It's actually a way to become stronger.
There's some work to be done there. I
That's,
can feel the work.
but you do meet the same issue and you go around the spiral and things become, I don't know, maybe more authentic, more honest, more gentle, and more powerful at the same time, if that's not a contradiction. Um, because really the only adversary you have is yourself, right? So once you come to terms with your own conflicted desires, then you can make it easier for other people to deal with you.
One of the things that the lecture spoke to, and forgive me, I had to take a call, so if somebody's already said this, but it was talking about the fact that there's only so much progress we're going to make in this lifetime in regard to certain issues. And along with that, it was talking about the guide was talking about the fact that we don't know where someone else is in their evolutionary process. And so I thought that was a very good point, just to have compassion for one another and not to expect that other people know what we do, know what we know, or behave the way that we think is the right way to behave, whatever that is. To have love and compassion and understanding for one another, particularly one's shortcomings that might be upsetting for us, and to recognize that we do carry within us issues from the past, our past lives, that we're not capable of unraveling in this particular life. It's sort of just a reminder of our humanity, the fact that we have limitations, and to be loving and forgiving and understanding for ourselves about these things. And clearly, the response to the child about wanting, disproportionate love and approval from what the world cannot provide us is that we are love. That, as Tracy said, in our essence, we are love. So we are this divine. We're divine beings of love and light, and so we need to take action and do or no action, whatever it is that helps us to connect with our unified self. And it may just simply be it may be as simple as being an observer of whatever it is that's happening and being with ourselves in our periods of separation. And that's the God presence. It's just the observer.
Thank you. Well, shall we have our meditation? Do we have more thoughts? Allison, usually what I do is we videotape these and I send them out to our group, if that's okay with you.
Lovely.
If anyone wants anything edited, we can do that too. But that's good because I'm just hoping that these kind of spur recognitions in people when and if they watch the videos, help them get closer to whatever they're meant to understand.
I just noticed that Regina hasn't shared anything. Maybe she wants to share something.
Oh yeah, yeah,
In the-
Regina, what's on your mind? Because I think your connection might be more stable now.
She usually shares.
No, well, I didn't share. I know I like to talk, but I usually share. But I've been listening, and I agree with everybody in both part of this lecture, which are very challenging, and I just love this lecture. So um, there was didn't raise my voice because I don't have anything else to add. 100% with what I experienced, more or less what everybody has said. And one thing that I might add because of my spiritualism is that this drama about love is like sometimes the problem that we have is sometimes we, especially in a relationship, but also could be with your children and etc. and your friends. It doesn't necessarily have to be with your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband. Is that we expect to get the love that we give, and when we don't get it, then we feel like we are not loved. And this was said by the pastor of my church, Ignacio Loyola, that we have to accept that because it's our human condition to expect, somehow we expect this perfect love. And sometimes when we give to, love, we expect, we have this idea that if we don't get what we think that is love, it's not love. And that is not true. It's like love is not perfect, and the only love that the few people that mention, the only love, we have to come to realize that the only love that is perfect is God. That's bottom line. And when we connect our God like, because we are made of um, in the image of God, which is true. So when we connect that love, that God loved us unconditional, and it's true because I experienced that. I don't experience that 24/7, but I'm working on it. And because as a Catholic, and I grew up in Argentina, which was very conservative, now is very progressive, but I grew up thinking that if I sinned, God is not going to love me. So that is not really what Jesus came to teach us, because by the fact that he forgave us um, our sin, there is where he came to teach us that God loves us unconditionally. So I have to fight that, growing up that, oh, you're going to go to hell if you lie to your mother, or if you steal a cookie, So I grew up with that because, that was Argentina back then. And there's still the Catholic, Catholic are divided in conservative and progressive one. So I have to accommodate that. That is not true. God loves us no matter what. And if we sin, we have to work on it because his love will never change. And when you connect with that, then this desperation of getting the love that you want, that to be perfect, then I found it in myself that demandiness that is our childlike demandiness that we want everything to be perfect, it diminishes, and it's a great help. I'm working on it, and it's a great help. That's the only thing that I think that I have to add. Otherwise, I enjoy. I agree with everybody. I have almost the same experience that you guys have, and it's you know I'm happy about it. But to connect with that, God loves me. And God, oh, there's the going to also, I have to add this problem of being accepted, of putting masks because we want to be accepted. Uh, when you click with God loves us the way that we are, then you get in touch with your authenticity and you are not afraid. I'm very authentic, but sometimes I do look for an approval and I fall into that. So I'm not the perfect authentic person. But when you get in touch with God loves me. So it's not that why I'm going to impress this person, that we always trying to impress, and I still do that. I find myself, but now I'm catching myself. And when you connect that, do I need to impress God? No, because that's what Jesus came to tell us. If you sin, don't worry about it. Just work on it and try to become better because God loves you even when you sin. And when you really connect to that, and you don't need to believe in Jesus, but when you connect really deep inside that, then your need and your demandingness to ourselves to be accepted and to impress people start diminishing because, well, if I do something and she doesn't like me, what about God? He loves me anyway. Do you understand? It's like uh, uh, it's a great help. That's it.
Thank you.
And I'm working. I don't want you to think that I'm working, and I can see that that my needs of to impress or being accepted has diminished a lot.
Yeah, we have
But
to know, yeah, we have to know who to seek love from, right? That's
yeah,
the
just to connect it with that. If we only understand how much God loves us, it's not that I don't want people to love me. No, I still want. But then if they do something that it appears that it doesn't love me, that is no longer so devastating. That's my point. It still hurt or whatever, but it's not as devastating because I come to agree to accept that we are human beings. We cannot demand a perfect love from another human because to begin with, we are not perfect. You want a perfect love, just look at God. That's the only one. It's very difficult to fall into that because I'm still deep down inside, even with my children. I say, oh, she didn't call me, she didn't answer.
yeah. Well, you froze,
Perfect
Regina.
love, look up for love.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, and also I think that just concept of that loving, giving love is fulfilling, and giving love is receiving, right? We say that giving is receiving. So, shall we have our meditation,
Mhm.
Tracy? Does anyone have a candle? Um,
I can look for one if no one has.
Yeah, I don't have one. I'm sorry.
oh,
Okay,
Mark,
give me a minute and I'll
got
look for one. Okay.
just got a candle. All right. So I am thinking about the need to, well, first of all, to this whole idea of dealing with the difficult times and the good times in a way that we keep on evolving our understanding of how to deal with those times, the good times and the bad times. Um, one of the other lectures, Mobility and Relaxation, talks about the dichotomy between tense striving and then collapse, just like not wanting to do anything. I think it's tempting in the good times to relax, and not do or not strive. But I think that all of us, I'm praying myself to take nourishment from the good times and use the relaxation and energy that comes with the good times to redouble my efforts at self-facing and doing what I know is right to fulfill my task here on this earth plane. So let's all meditate.
You see the candle there?
I do. So I will mute myself so you don't hear puppy barking. And let's all have 15 minutes, okay? Um, I'll set the timer. It's always so nourishing when we talk to each other, and I always feel the energy coming through that all of us are united in this path of self-facing. I'm so grateful for it. Okay, thank you.